Live and welcome everybody to another Money Move show with yours truly, John C., and the ever wonderful Wendy Lee out there rocking it on social media, Wendy Lee Online. So, how are you doing today, Wendy?
I'm good. I've been upping my game over on Instagram. It's fun.
Awesome. Yeah. What's going on there? What have you been doing?
So, really fun tip, because I'm kind of a social media guru, right? Really fun. I guess not a tip, but fun news is, so right now on Instagram, Reels, which I've talked to you a little bit about, right?
Yeah.
Reels are really helping people expand their audience and expose themselves and get attention, right?
Yep.
And so that's what we want, is attention. And so I've been leaning into Reels there, and it's growing my following. But I just heard that they're launching Reels on Facebook, which is awesome, because the short form video, right? We're doing long form live video right now, but that short form video is really popular. And anyway, so it's going to be an amazing tool for anyone out there building a business or building a brand online. If you're primarily on Facebook, this is good news.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you talked about Reels, and I'm a statement right here, everybody. So those of you that follow Wendy Lee and her social media, I'm a proven living statement that you can teach an old dog new tricks. So she has really helped me up my social media game. So make sure you're following her, Wendy Lee Online. I mean, not only does she talk about money, I think she's actually starting another channel on that as well. But her social media game is just second to none. So good stuff. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So, and your lighting looks so much better than mine today. I don't know what's going on with my lighting today. I'm gonna have to figure that out.
But your camera's a little less sharp and your lighting.
Yeah, I don't know. So I must have zigged when I should have zagged or something. But that's all right. The content's still the content, so we're gonna roll with it. So today we're talking about pulling money out of a 401k. A lot of people think about it, doing it. A lot of people have done it. Just to be completely transparent, back in my younger days, I pulled some money out of my 401k. It was an old one. And people do that for a variety of reasons. I mean, a lot of it's just I'm tight on cash or whatever. My situation at the time, I'd gotten laid off from a job, and there was a gap period in between finding that next job after 08. And so it was one of those things that's like, okay, well, I got to do what I got to do. And that's life, right? I mean, sometimes you've got to do it, but I don't know. Have you ever had to pull money out of 401k, or somebody that has, or?
Well, yeah, I know people that have. I've never had a 401k, but I had accounts set up for my kids, like some kind of life insurance, something. And I did wind up, when we were adopting and needed cash, I pulled that out, and I kind of regret doing that.
Yeah. Well, and that's, there's a little bit of a drawback to that, but it's not quite as severe as the foreign. Actually, there is some drawbacks to that, but it's not as severe as a 401k because of all the penalties.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that are so frustrating. And if you've got a 401k, you know what I'm talking about. It's your money, kind of, right? Okay. And so, you guys have heard me joke in the past about the IRS, and if you put those two words together, THEIRS is one word. What does it spell? Theirs, because they're going to figure a way to get theirs out of your pocket. But tapping into that 401k, you're really, in essence, what you're doing is robbing from yourself, right? And most people are like, well, I don't understand. What do you mean? And we're going to talk a little bit about what that really means to your future self, right? Yeah. And you talk about the 401k and stuff like that. It's tempting because it's right there, and people, well, it's so much easier. I got bills to pay off, or I want to get a fresh start, because you're paying credit card bills. And you and I've talked about the debt snowball before, the debt avalanche and things like that. And people can do that, but it seems, a lot of people want to take that easier path. Just someone grab some money, 20, 25 grand or whatever. It's not the end of the world, and pay off their bills or whatever. I mean, you see the logic in that, right?
Yeah. Well, and my question would be, like, in that situation, is it better to borrow money from myself, right? Or from a bank? You know what I mean? I'm the person, I might use that logic. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it goes back to that concept of it's my money, I'm going to go ahead and touch it. But, the government puts certain penalties on there, right? If you're not 59 and a half, you're going to get slapped with taxes
Mm-hmm.
And you're also going to get slapped with an additional 10% penalty,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even though it's your money, you're going to get hit with 10%. So, you go to pull out 10 grand or whatever, right? Well, you've got 20% coming out in taxes because that's what they're going to assess for taxes. And then you've got another 10% penalty on top of it. So instead of 10 grand, you actually end up with 7. Here's the other thing that doesn't even include state income tax,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, if you're living in a state now, fortunately, we both live in the state of Tennessee. There is no state income tax, and there are 9 other states out there too. So, if you're looking for a tax-free state, Tennessee's not the only one. But it's one of those that if you're living in Indiana, there's an additional 6%, or I think Illinois is maybe 8% or something like that. Look up your local tax brackets, right? I'm not giving tax advice. So you really end up with a lot less money, maybe even, upwards of 30-40% less than you thought you were going to pull out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what typically happens is you pull out even more to cover the taxes, right? So, looking at that, one of the big things to consider is, what are my other options? Right now, I mean, I don't know if you've financed a car or a house lately. My wife and I are talking about buying a new house, and I called and got the 30-year fixed rates, looked at the 30, 20, and the 15, and it's crazy how low they are. It's like 2.75%, 2.5%. So money is at an all-time sale right now, right? It's the lowest it's ever been as far as you as the consumer borrowing that stuff. And that's where you say, okay, well, that's not even keeping up with inflation. Inflation right now is at 5.4%. Maybe that's another option. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So rather than
money to borrow with a low interest rate right now, for sure.
Yeah. And it has been for the last several years. I mean, that's one of the things, one of the challenges, younger, not so much millennials, they're millennials a little bit, but that Gen Z, that, that next generation, I think it's Gen Z, they see this as like, this is how it's always been. And that's not the case. I remember when I got my first house, 30-year fixed rate was 8% for excellent credit. You say that now, they look at you like, oh my gosh, what do you have, a 200 credit score, which isn't even possible. But it's one of those things that you look at all the different ways to how to come up with a solution. And, looking at that 401k, although it may be very tempting, you're really shooting yourself in the foot as far as ever having that big nest egg. Okay. Yeah. So, one of the things that I've talked about in the past is that rule of 72, right? You remember that? Money doubling and stuff like that. For those of you that haven't watched our show in the past, the rule of 72, I didn't invent it. It's been around since like the 5th century. Is the earliest, they found it in writing, right? But it's a very simple formula that talks about how fast or how slow your money's doubling in whatever account. I don't care if it's bank account or whatever. And all you do is you divide whatever rate of return you're getting, divide 72 into that number, and it's going to tell you how many years it's going to take for that money to double one time.
Right. Okay.
So for example, if I had, $1,000 and I was getting a 10% rate of return, well, $1,000, it's at 10% divided by 72, right? That's going to end up at 7.2 years. That's how long it's going to take for that $1,000 to turn into $2,000. So, you start looking at that, and I'm just going to ask you, I threw out the formula real quick. So before you can do the math, let's say you were 30 years old, because I think you're 28, 29, right? So let's say you were 30 years old and you were going to pull out 25 grand. How much do you think that would take from yourself when you were 65? Give me a guess. Just throw out a number.
100,000.
Okay. And okay. Well, yeah. So I'm going to take a hit of about 100 grand. Well, let's say we're getting a 10% rate of return on our 401k, which I don't think, you tell me, is 10% out of whack as far as a 401k getting a rate of return. No,
I always think it's like around 8, right?
Eight's a conservative. Yeah. 8 to 10. 10's easier math. So it's kind of still morning. So we're going to go with 10. So it's somewhere in that 8 to 10, but again, rule of 72 divided by the number, you'll figure it out. So you look at that, that means that from the age 30 to age 35 or 65, that's 35 years. So if my money's doubling about every 7 years, that means it's going to double 5 times. So it's not 5 times 25,000, it's doubling 5 times. So that means that first 7 years, it's going to go from 25 to 50,000. The second 7 years, it's going to go from 50,000 to 100,000. Then it's going to go from 100 to 200. That's 3. 200 to 400. 400 to 800. $800,000.
So that car that you borrowed the 25 grand for is not worth $1 million.
No, I mean, seriously, that's some of the things that it's like, and I did the math like 3 times. I'm like, oh my gosh, is that right? And I do this for a living, right? I'm like, let me do it again. Let me do it again. But it doubles the money. Your money doubles every X number of years based on your rate of return. So if you're getting a 10% rate of return, you look at that 25 grand, and 25 grand, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I pulled out 10 grand in mine, and I look at the cost now, and I was about 35 when I did that, right? And you look at the cost, it's 30 years. It's like, oh my gosh, what did I just do to myself? And that's why middle class keeps falling behind, because we're not taught this stuff, and we make these decisions based on bad information and assumptions. Yeah, I know I'm going to be taking 100,000 hit, but I'm going to be doing, I got 30 more years, 35 more years to make this up. It's no big deal. It is a huge flipping deal.
Wow.
And
I feel like everyone needs to hear what you just said.
I know, that's why we're posting this out there. And I agree. So share this with your friends. Wake up, America. Wake up. This is your financial wake up call, right? You look at that and it's like, OMG. Are you kidding me? I just took out 25 grand. I thought it was no big deal. And not only that, you didn't even get to keep the whole 25,000 because you had to pay the penalties. You had to pay the taxes. So instead of 25, a 10% penalty on that. So now I'm down to 23 and some change. Oh, another 20% on that. Now you're down to 18. I mean, it's just like, are you kidding me? And so that's the thing, that 401k, it's got a lot of hooks in there that people don't realize, and they blindly walk through. Oh, I've got all this money. And whatever you have in your 401k today, or if you've got a SEP IRA and things like that, whatever you've got in there, about 30% of it is not yours.
Right.
Okay. You're in a partnership with the IRS, and that's what they're going to come in and end up taking, depending on what your tax bracket is in retirement. Obviously it changes and things like that. But you look at that stuff and you think 25,000, and it's not. It's 800,000 you just stole from the future Wendy Lee. So how do you feel about that?
That hurts.
Yeah.
Hurts.
Well, and that's the big thing.
I wonder when people are pulling this stuff out, if anyone explains that to them.
Oh no, of course not. No, of course not. I mean, it's hey, whatever you want, we're going to do it. And so the government takes their fair share now, and then they take the penalty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why. I mean, they're getting the taxes on it. I don't understand why they do a penalty. And some things you can do. There are a couple things you can do that, for hardship or whatever, that you can avoid the penalty part. You still have to pay the taxes. But like if you were going to buy your first home or buying a home, you could take, I think it's up to $10,000 out without actually having that penalty portion, that 10% portion. Or if you've got some kind of financial hardship, you can get some exceptions to that. But they're not handing those out. I mean, it's one of those that you've got to have a real reason, and they're really stringent on what they do and what they allow, because again, they want theirs, right? So it's one of those things that you've got to really look at it. But not even beyond the penalty part, it's really that rule of 72, that future you that you're robbing from.
Yeah.
And I know if you could go back to your 25-year-old self and talk about money, what would you tell yourself?
Put more away. Let it grow.
Yeah.
You can always make more money. Like in the current, like you can always make more immediate cash. There's always ways to do it. Like, especially today. Like in my 20s, it was right. In your 20s, it was a little less easy to just make a quick buck. But man, like, I mean, I came up with something 2 weeks ago and I started selling it, and I've made several, $1,000 doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a side hustle. It's a side gig economy, right?
So there's so many ways to just make money right now that if you're strapped, like, get creative, don't rob from the future.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is, robbing from your future.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Big time. Exactly. Like, way more than, give up the Starbucks for a couple weeks or something.
Well, and that's one of the things. I mean, just like you said, when you said 100 grand, I'm thinking, before I actually did the math on it, I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. No. I mean, and that's what you're doing. You're making a huge impact. You think $25,000 isn't a big deal. And in the big scheme of things, today it's not. And I know some people, that's, depend. And I get all that. But, in the big scheme of things, $25,000, I mean, it's hard to find a good used car for 25 grand anymore.
Right.
And so it's like, well, hey, I'd rather do it than borrow from the bank. But you start doing the math, and that's what I love about what I do. It's all numbers, right? It's all numbers.
It's like, okay, even if your interest rate was 20% over 5 years, you're still making out way better than, right? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, that's that
cash flow. You're
yeah,
better
you're
off
right.
out your.
Well, like you said, you can always make more money.
Yeah.
Okay. Go out and get a side hustle, this, that, or the other. Or the other option would be to borrow. I'm not a big fan of telling people to go out and borrow money. But if you've got a bunch of bills that are just weighing you down, like credit cards and things like that at higher interest, talk to your local bank, or better yet, talk to a local credit union and, talk about getting a consolidation loan. And they do them all the time. And the interest rates are much, much lower. I mean, literally half, if not a third of what you're paying to credit cards. You're on a fixed payment term, right? So it's not just kind of stretching on forever like a lot of credit card debt. It's a fixed payment term, and you make the payment and you go out and get a side gig, or, do what you said. I mean, there's a ton of ways to make money. We've talked about that before, and do a debt snowball or something like that and pay it down. Or if you've got an emergency or something like that, do a personal loan or something like that. Stay away from title loans. We'll have a show on that sometime. But, you look at that and I realize sometimes your back's against the wall, right? You got to do what you got to do. And at the end of the day, it is your money. Do what you got to do, but go into it realizing the impact you're really having. Go into it with eyes wide open. And it doesn't even have to be somebody, well, John, I'm going to do my thing. I'm 50 or whatever like that. Well, you even look at that, and again, just using that traditional retirement age. So I've got 50 to 65. Let's say I have 100 grand sitting that are in my 401k that I'm going to pull out, right? I've got a few hundred grand in there. And unfortunately, most people at age 50 don't, but a lot of people do. And we're talking to somebody right now that actually they have some money they're going to pull out to pay off bills and things like that, just because it's stressful. You start getting to a point in life. I used to joke when I'd see older guys walking around. I'm like, why are you wearing dark socks? Because they don't care anymore. They're tired of being stressed, right? And it's like, hey, same thing with your bill. I just don't want to worry about it anymore. And I get that, because I'm kind of creeping up on that age now. But it's one of those things that you look at. I'm 50 years old. I pull $100,000 out. Well, what did I do to my 65-year-old self? That's only 15 years away. That's not that long. Mm-hmm. Well, again, rule of 72. 72, dividing it by 10%, 7 years, 7.2, 7 years. So that means that money's going to double twice in that 15 years. So that $100,000 went to 200, and the 200, 400 grand in that short period of time. 400 grand in that short period of time. That's why you've got to protect your IRA, your 401k, or your retirement accounts in general, like it was, last man standing, like it's the Alamo, right? Because when you get to those retirement years, there's going to be a point in your life. Everybody, hear me out on this. There is going to be a point in your life where you literally cannot work anymore because you're physically unable, your health's not holding up, your spirits aren't holding up, and you just want to, hey, I want to enjoy the remaining time of my life. And I know some of us at 40, are thinking, oh yeah, I'd like to do that now. And that's okay. Go find something that creates passive income. But you've got to realize that 401k has to be, the last thing you touch, and you start talking into market losses and things like that. That's when it really gets sticky and tricky. But again, you really got to focus on protecting it, protecting your nest egg, not necessarily 401k, but protecting your nest egg. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good lesson here.
Yeah. And that's,
that's it. Tag people.
Yeah, no doubt. So, and that's the thing, guys, we're trying to get the word out on this stuff. And these are just money lessons. I mean, we're not trying to sell anything or whatever like that. But if you like what we do, I mean, we're obviously here on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook, whatever else. Make sure you like and share our videos. We're trying to get our following up. Our whole goal, again, when we started this whole show, we want to teach people how to make money. I mean, that's something that, Wendy's crushing it out there. And I've got my thing going on too. And I fired my boss. She's never had a boss. She's had people wanting to be her boss. She's like, no, I'm my own boss. I'm a she boss, right? Is that what that's called? We teach people how to make money. We teach people how to save that money, how to find ways to save more money, get their budgets under control, be intentional about your money. We teach them how to grow it, and we teach them how to keep it. And this is one of those keep lessons and kind of grow lessons too, but it's about keeping it. You look at keeping it and protecting it. And that's one of the sad things is you're robbing it from yourself, which is almost crazy to think about it. You'll be 65, want to go back to your 30-year-old self and, strangle them.
Yeah.
Because you took that money when you didn't need to, because there's so many other alternatives, right? So many other alternatives. So
tight. I want to say this too, like whoever's in that tight money pinch, like you're stressed and overwhelmed, and like I've been there. And I want to say this too shall pass. Like it will, right? Sometimes when we're backed into a corner, instead of saving ourselves with money that could be paying us in the future or in any situation, it's what can I learn right now and how can I let this grow me and take me to a new level? Anytime I've had financial hardships, I've grown a ton through it. And so, and John, you know about my recent stuff, right? Where I had money lessons I needed to learn. And unfortunately, some of them I've learned the hard way with theirs. And so but I now have such a great system in place that I can't screw up, and I never would have had that system had I not experienced the hardship and had the sick late nights where I can't sleep because I'm stressed and worried. And I would tell myself, this too shall pass. Like, this isn't my life, right? And so if you could feel that backed into a corner, like look at all your options, be educated about the choices you make, and get creative.
Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to reach out and get a second set of eyes on it. That's what my company does all day long, right? We sit down with people and kind of help them figure out those situations. Mm-hmm. Not only the stuff for tomorrow, how do I save for tomorrow, but how do I figure out what I got to do today?
Yeah.
So, and don't ever feel like you're the only one going through this. And I know that can be kind of, everybody walks around with this veneer on, right? You see somebody, oh, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And inside you're dying, right? You got the sleepless nights or whatever, because you're worried about finances or whatever the case may be. You can feel isolated and alone when that's going on, but I'm here to tell you, you're not. There are a lot of people out there struggling with this stuff. So don't beat yourself up about it. But don't stick your head in the sand either, and or take the easy way out, or what you think is the easy way out. Because what you're doing, you're really kicking the can, and you're going to pay a tenfold price down the road.
Yes, that right there. That's the gold nugget of this.
There you go. There you go. Well, and that's really what it is, because you solved a $25,000 problem today, right? But how are you going to solve for that $800,000 gap 35 years from now? Mm-hmm. And that's in essence what you've created. And this stuff doesn't just work itself out. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about, pulling money out of a 401k or an IRA or something like that, ask yourself, and do the math. 72 divided by the interest rate, that's the number of years, and multiply whatever you're wanting to pull out by that amount. Right. So if you're 30, it's 35 years to age 65. If you're 40, it's 25 years. You can do the simple math there and just do the calculation and really understand that's what you're paying yourself. And oh, by the way, don't forget about the 20% on the taxes. Don't forget about the state income tax at wherever state you're at. And don't forget about another 10% penalty from the IRS. And ask yourself, is it really worth it? And I'm going to say 95 to 99% of the time, it's not.
Right.
You're in a panic and it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to figure something out. Don't do it. Figure out an alternative. Ask yourself, okay, how much money do I actually need? Do I have to have? Here it is. If it's debt, get on a debt snowball program. Right. Reach out to me. I've got a great free calculator. You can have it, right? You can have it. I'll email it to you. Say, here, just add in your debts. You stack them smallest to tallest. How much extra? And you'll be surprised. You'll be out of debt 3, 4, 5 years, depending on whatever you plug in. If you want to try to get a lower payment because your payments are struggling or whatever, and you're just making it barely from check to check or whatever, look to find out, hey, let me go to a credit union or whatever and see what kind of consolidation stuff they have. There's a lot of stuff online too. Capital One's got a program. SunTrust Bank through, I think it's like Lightstorm or something like that, has a great program. You can borrow it online or whatever, and literally have that money within a couple of days. Now, again, don't go into debt if you don't have to. That's kind of a last bastion. But that 401k, tap it into the 401k, 403b, IRA, whatever, that should be like when Armageddon's happening in your household. That's okay. Then let's seriously consider. But up to that point, no way, right? Any other questions on that, Wendy? I think I've kind of made my point there.
Good lesson that I think is great to hear. Yeah,
Well,
every-
you know, that's one of the things that you know, a lot of people just don't do the math, or they don't know how to do the math. They don't know that formula, and so they say, oh well, you know, it's going to be a few $1,000s extra I'm going to miss out on, and they think short term rather than really what you're pulling for yourself in the future, right? So you know, again, I'm going to kind of wrap it up with that, but guys, again, my request from you, if you're getting value out of this channel, if you thought this was a good piece of information, share it, right? Share the video with friends. Say, hey, saw this, thought of you. Also, do us a favor, that little subscribe button down below, click follow, click subscribe, and give us your comments. I mean, and if you've got a topic you want to have, I've been reaching out to some different groups I'm involved in on Facebook and social media saying, hey, we'd love to have some topics, or if you've got questions about finance or building retirement or a side hustle or whatever the case, we would love to talk to you. Reach out to myself, John C. at Black Swan Money, or Wendy Lee at Wendy Lee Online, and let us know what you want to hear. This show is for you. This show is for you. So remember that. Everybody go out, be prosperous, enjoy your day. Wendy, thanks for being here. And I've got to fix my lighting. I feel like I'm like, you're like super cool over there, and I'm like, you know, Mr. Brown guy over here. So it's like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but we'll fix that for next time. But again, everybody make it a great day. Share this video and go out and be financially fruitful. Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye.